Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Ask Anything presented by Moser Consulting. I'm your host, Angel Leon, Moser's Director of Personnel. Thank you for joining us once again on Ask Anything. And with me today is my friend who started at Moser the same day as me, Cody Friend. See what I did there?
That's great.
Cody and I are going to go on a deeper dive as to the general value of Honeycomb, our data and analytics platform here at Moser Consulting. Cody is a talented strategist and data expert with over a decade of experience in various industries. As the director of strategy within our data analytics division, he leads a team of professionals in delivering innovative solutions for clients in industries ranging from healthcare to finance. Prior to joining Moser, Cody worked as a data engineer for a large regional bank, where he honed his technical skills and developed a deep understanding of the role data plays in business strategy. He also spent 6 years in higher education, working for both public and private universities, where he helped to shape the next generation of professionals. Cody earned his MBA with a concentration in finance from Anderson University, where he developed a comprehensive understanding of financial strategy and management. He also holds a Bachelor of Arts in computer science, which has been instrumental in his success in the field of data analytics. And with that, we welcome our guest, Cody Friend. Cody, how are you?
Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing excellent, and even better that you're here today. So before we begin with the questions that we have for this episode, I feel like we've discussed Honeycomb in the past several times in some of our past seasons. We just discussed it last week with Brian and Nathan. So for our listeners, what is our Honeycomb platform?
Honeycomb is a managed service product offered by Moser Consulting. We use Snowflake, we use Azure, Power BI to provide end-to-end data and analytics solution. So it's an end-to-end platform that would allow us to ingest source data from disparate systems across an organization, centralizing your data within a data lake so that we can build end-to-end data insights for any reporting or downstream systems.
So basically, if I have an HRIS, I could use that within Honeycomb, right? I could grab data from that HRIS and put it into Honeycomb and make sense of that data.
Yeah, we could ingest data from your HRIS system, load it into Honeycomb, and then we could help you build some dashboards upon that for end-to-end insights.
To make help decisions, obviously, with the data that we get. So, talking about, I don't know, maybe salary information and maybe employee data, such as where they live, such as if they're remote, if, their ethnicity, the classes, et cetera, things like that.
Yeah, and we can join that with different systems outside of your HRS system and give you a lot better picture of, your HR environment, as well as just overall employee satisfaction, onboarding. Any system that you have that ties back to employees, we could join those all together.
Okay, so that's Honeycomb. So can you tell me what have been some of the most interesting or unexpected uses of cloud data and analytics solutions that you've heard of?
Yeah, so we've worked with a couple different companies in the past on some very interesting projects, some you wouldn't necessarily think of. One was a local company, and they specialized in fluid sample analysis. We partnered with this company, started working through, I think it was 30 years worth of historical data. And we took this data, ran it through some machine learning applications, and we were able to help them automate the output of that fluid sample analysis. So if you think about changing your oil in your automobile, you change that on a regular interval. If you have a very large vehicle, maybe it's a dump truck for a mining company or a high-end race car, you're not going to want to change that fluid very frequently. It's going to be very expensive. It's going to cost you a lot of money. This company went through and they would just take little samples of fluid from those engines. They would analyze it, and they would have a person go through and provide recommendations on what to do with that data. They did that for 30 years. With data and analytics, we were able to take the data provided by those people over the last 30 years and provide recommendations for, did you need to change your oil in this vehicle? Did you need to replace a bearing? Is your engine going bad? We could do a lot of the analysis and provide them expected results and basically take the people out of that manual process. We were able to get rid of a lot of human error and allow the people to actually focus on what they do best. So that was one piece that was pretty cool and unexpected. You wouldn't expect to analyze, diesel engine fluids with data and analytics. Another piece that we worked on was for a large healthcare company, specifically in their cybersecurity and merger and acquisition department. And we were able to help this company consolidate a lot of their data so that they could make mergers and acquisitions a lot smoother. As they acquired new companies, they had different project managers that helped fully integrate these different systems. And we were able to use data and analytics to ingest different projects from different project managers across a large organization and be able to provide insights into which companies were integrated, which ones were not, which ones were at risk. And then we're able to calculate a potential risk for the overall organization so they know if there was ever a data breach, this specific subsidiary is somebody we should look at based on these risk factors. So very different spectrums of data. One was calculating risk for a large company. The other was analyzing fluid samples. All of those were able to be done with similar tools within data and analytics.
Both of those examples are amazing. Just a completely different side of or projects that you guys were handling. But I want to go back to the first one. You mentioned 30 years of data.
30 years.
Where do you even begin?
Yeah. So with that, we had to start consolidating some of the data. They had data across multiple systems segmented by year. We had to consolidate that so that we could at least see 30 years in one pane of view and then start sorting that data based on relevancy. If we're talking fluid samples, a lot's changed in 30 years. The different types of oil have changed. The different types of automobiles have changed. Engines have changed. So stuff has changed. And then recommendations have also changed. You think about in the last 30 years, we've gone from carbureted engines all the way to fuel injected. And now we're pushing towards electric vehicles. The recommendation for each of those vehicles is going to be different, across years. We had to take more recent data that was potentially more relevant and kind of sort that data a little bit and build out our training data set from what was relevant.
I can only imagine the the dashboard on that and the visualization piece that you guys must have put together.
That one was pretty cool. That one was more focused on machine learning and a little bit less on data visualization. That one was focused on providing recommendations and trying to help automate some of the people pieces. The project I was talking about for mergers and acquisitions, that one had a very beautiful dashboard, whole lot of graphics involved. And, it's something that's presented to board of directors. Definitely something you'd want to show off.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. So let's stay within that line of thinking because I want to ask you how cost effective is it to utilize cloud data and analytics for businesses? Because you mentioned two very extreme cases, right? Very different that in the end, obviously, did provide an end result for both businesses. But when you go into the details, they're very specific. So how cost effective is this in the end?
Yeah, so cloud data and analytics solutions can be very cost effective, especially Honeycomb. I think it depends on how it's implemented. If you don't have much expertise, check a bunch of the wrong boxes, use the wrong tools, it could be expensive. Within the cloud, compared to an on-premise solution, any interaction you have with cloud, whether it's moving data, computing data, transporting it, or just processing it, everything has a cost compared to on-premise servers where the data just sits there. You paid for the server, you paid for the electricity. So you got to have that type of mentality. But once you actually know what you're doing, you can maximize the cost. You can get large scale discounts. And then if you partner with a company that has expertise in the cloud, you can make it very cost effective. We've partnered with companies from 12 employees all the way up to 12,000 employees. And everybody's got a price point that they can work with. You just need a good partner that understands how to work through the cloud and leverage the different pieces of technology to make it cost effective.
That's very interesting because obviously, as you mentioned, there are many pieces to this that just go beyond that initial conversation. But like you mentioned, you can have as little as 10 people on your staff, or you can go into an organization that has thousands.
Yeah, it doesn't matter necessarily the size of the organization. A lot of it depends on the volume and velocity of data. If you're a small shop, we can build something that's going to be very cost effective and start looking like lunch money. We can also start building very high-end solutions that are going to run, a Fortune 500 company and anything in between.
Interesting. So how can listeners use cloud data and analytics solutions to their advantage?
And so I think there's some different areas where, any company can benefit from having data in the cloud. I'd say the first piece is being able to access your data anywhere. In a traditional environment, you may have a server that's only accessible within that network. With cloud, you can work, anywhere. You also have redundancy. If there was a disaster recovery scenario where you had to recover your server environment, in the past, you would have had full server room with your databases. If you were lucky, you had an
Right.
offsite location, and that offsite location had everything replicated. It was
Mhm.
very manual, very expensive. A lot of hours go into that. When you go into
Mhm.
the cloud, let's say you're working with Microsoft Azure, you can check a box and now your data is replicated across multiple data centers. So at any one point in time, a tornado hits, this location. If you have a hurricane in this location and an earthquake in another, you have redundancy and you didn't have any system outage. So that's one way. Another area that a lot of companies can benefit is elastic workloads. In the past, if you were working on an on-premise environment, let's say you have some huge processes that run one time a year. Let's think higher education and its enrollment data. During that enrollment period, you'll have a lot of students trying to log in and register for a class. In those older environments, you had to buy a bunch of servers to have the processing, the storage capacity,
Yeah.
to be able to handle those workloads. And when you're not using those, you're still paying for all that hardware. That was in a traditional model. If you move to the cloud, you have elastic scaling for your different workloads. And it doesn't matter how much capacity you need, you pay for your base amount. And then you think about that one time a year where you might need more storage, you might need more RAM, you need more processing. Everything in the cloud, when it's configured properly, would dynamically scale, give you more resources. And when it's not being used, it's going to scale back and you're not paying for that. So I think that's something a lot of people could benefit from compared to on-premise environments.
That's a very good example of one you use about higher education because you don't, from an outside perspective, you don't think about it because, come June, July, and early August, people are starting to enroll in courses, et cetera, or, looking ahead to next year. And I can only imagine how hard that is going to be on that on-prem system server versus in the cloud where everything is just up there. Doesn't matter how
Yeah,
strenuous the process is or how many people are trying to access it.
that's the beauty of it. If you need 10 servers 1 minute and 4 the next, it'll scale dynamically. And you're not sitting around and in the higher education example, you'd be slammed in August and you'd be slammed in December with class registrations. What
Mhm.
happens in February when you're not using all those resources? They're just sitting there and you're just paying for them to do nothing. With this cloud environment, you wouldn't pay for that. You would only pay for what you actually needed.
That's very interesting. So before we go, what advice would you give to someone looking to implement a cloud data and analytics solution into their business?
I would recommend that anybody looking to move towards the cloud, I would recommend they find a partner, whether it's another consulting company like Moser or just, a friend, somebody that's done it before, and talk to them about some recommendations. I would also recommend that they start with a small and focused project. That way they can get very specific quick wins. You're not going to want to migrate your entire system to the cloud overnight. That's
Right.
just asking for failure. But if you can start with some small systems and kind of step into it, you'll get a feel for what the cost is going to be, what's involved, and you'll get a lot more buy-in from executives if you can show value right out the gate. So I would recommend starting small and getting some advice.
And as you mentioned, you mentioned disaster recovery before. That's something that we've talked about in this podcast before, how important that is. And so if you're making that switch from on-prem to a cloud, if you do that gradually, as you're explaining, obviously you are not exposing yourself to possible failure if everything goes on the first try, if you're trying to move everything at once. But if you do it gradually, then you're probably going to have better success. And then in the end, if while you're doing this, something happens, you at least have something in the cloud versus trying to push it all at once and then maybe a failure occurring halfway through.
That's exactly true.
All right. So with that, we'd like to thank Cody Friend for being with us today on Ask Anything. Cody, it's been a pleasure to have you on.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening in to this week's edition of Ask Anything presented by Moser Consulting. We hope you enjoyed listening to Cody Friend talk to us about the great value of our Honeycomb platform. Join us next time when we continue to dive deeper with our resident experts and what they're currently working on. Remember to send us your ideas or topics via our social media feeds. In the meantime, please remember to give us a rating and subscribe to our feed wherever you get your podcasts. Until then, if you're looking for a partner, you know who to call. Moser Consulting. So long, everybody.
Go